Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of SuperFantaFi. This being a show where I talk about TV shows of the supernatural, fantasy, and/or science fictional genre. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the season 2 finale of Quantum Leap. A great episode. A lot of really interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. So we're immediately jumping into Ben's new leap. And I think it's so interesting that most of this episode doesn't revolve around the leap directly, so I think that's so interesting because this has been the most divergent leap there's been so far, where it's like, yeah, this leap thing's happening on, but there's like all this other stuff happening present day which ties into the past. So Ben's inside the body of a race car driver. He's also racing with his dad, but the dad's not in a situation because he's got a bad heart situation going on, and Ben's trying to convince his dad to not race, but for him it's like, this is too important because if they lose this, like, they're going to lose sponsorships. The people that are on the team, it isn't just about them. It is about them, but it's also about the rest of this family that is this crew, and don't want to let them down. But before Ben can even really get into that, lo and behold, the villain of the hour, Jeffrey, reveals himself to Ben, and we kind of finally get the insight. Like, I was trying to piece it together, what was his issue with Ben? Ben tried to save his dad. Well, we find out the accident that killed his dad, which I will also state, the way it was shot made me almost feel like, instead of dying from the aneurysm that he was originally supposed to, he found the letter and died in a car accident instead beforehand. It's like, no. What happened is this was sometime later, because Hannah says it later on that they got 600 days together again as a family. So it was like sometime later he ended up stumbling across the letter, and Hannah tried to explain things, but he didn't believe it because from the very beginning, Jeffrey picked up on stuff from the first episode where Jeffrey met Ben, and he was a kid, but he couldn't really rationalize it. It's like, hey, here's this guy who's with my uncle, and seems like there's something going on between him and my mom. But he couldn't understand it. And then he overheard his mom and his dad arguing. Ben ended up kind of drifting their family apart, which I thought there were marital issues. Kind of was in that moment, but it's like, my mom had to keep a big secret because of you. It's like, it is kind of unfair because technically Ben did meet Hannah before Josh, but it's still that thing of she still still had a lit candle for Ben, and for her it's like, my heart can be in love with Josh and the family we started, but also still love Ben. It's like, it's kind of this whimsicalness of the time travel. I mean, it's kind of like the Doctor. Everyone gets swept up in oh my god, being with the Doctor's so amazing, but it has its drawbacks and its downside, and it's kind of that. And that's why, Hannah still did live her life, but I thought there was going to be some situation where it's just Hannah still held on to Ben. She know they'd run into each other eventually, but I guess that's also what the run-in, why it stung even more last episode, because Hannah hid that from him, because all they knew is he died in a car accident. They didn't know that what Ben did, once again, it made it seem like, he died in a car accident instead of the aneurysm, but soon after, they found out, but like I said, there was a gap in time between that, but that's still more time. But obviously from Jeffrey's perspective, it doesn't matter, because in his mind, you're responsible for his dad. If it wasn't for you interfering in my mom's life, then maybe my dad would still be alive. That's also the thing too, if it wasn't for Ben, who knows where your mom would be. You wouldn't be here. It's all meant to be. It all happens for a reason. Whatever entity or power is out there, it's making this all happen for a reason. But obviously for Jeffrey, it's he's, all this anger has festered in him for so long. And a lot of the things that Ben was telling Hannah, you should take this deal and invest in this, and this. He took a lot of that. He overheard those conversations last episode. So when he wants a school science prize or whatever, or he won a big prize, he ended up taking that money and investing it, and ended up becoming the rich dude that he is present day as Gideon. And this is what this has all been about, what he's been waiting for. He's been waiting for his opportunity to use his mom's code to switch places with Ben, because he's like, Ben, you think you're helping people, but you're not. You think you're something, you're not trained for this. He's not. This was never supposed to be Ben's mission. It was always supposed to be Addison's. But it's and Jeffrey hasn't seen everything that Ben's going through. He hasn't seen the journey that Ben has taken. So he doesn't see all the good that Ben's done, because he wouldn't anyway. It doesn't matter, because in his mind, it's if Ben didn't do good. If he didn't like fix what was wrong, then he wouldn't be leaping at all. But Jeffrey's not. For him, it's like all he sees and all he feels is his anger, and that's what's drowning out everything. So he wants to switch places with Ben, and it's like he's like, I'm gonna fix this. I'm gonna fix that. I'm gonna build the world in the way I want to. But Ben's like, that's not what this is about. We're supposed to fix these things. We can't change history, which Ben knows first and foremost. Time and time again, he stepped outside the bounds of the leap to try and fix stuff, and it didn't work out that way. He's here for a particular thing. He's not meant to change and weave the world to the way he wants to it, but he's supposed to do the little bit of good he can have ripple effects and make the world a better place. That's what his role in all of this is. But it ends up, because Jeffrey's coming at this from, it is a situation if he's probably going to go back in time and try and save his dad. To be fair, it's not like you really can control the leaps, but I guess he's like, right, I'll keep leaping and leaping, changing everything. Who knows what the ramifications of that would be in the long run? Like, that could all backfire. There is a science to all of this. Yes, it's science fiction, but there's still like a science to it, versus like there is something, some higher power or something being a driving force behind all of this. But like I said, it's just someone who is so consumed with rage would never be able to do it good, because everything would be out of selfish reasons and you'd be driven by the anger in your heart. And so Ben's got to juggle dealing with this leap while also dealing with Gideon. He tries to call Hannah, but it was Jeffrey who picked up, and it's like, ooh, you made the mistake of saying Ben's song first. But it's like, right, you thought you said the name, if Hannah was there. Fortunately, she wasn't there. Jeffrey picked up the phone and hung it up immediately the moment he heard Ben's name. So when it's all said and done, the crew who's gotten fired is trying to figure out what they're going to do, and lo and behold, who shows up? Janice. I was like, yeah, that's so dope, because Janice is like, yeah, I was working in Hawaii, but lo and behold, and Magic shows up with her. She's got her own imaging chamber, because they kept it, because I guess Magic was like, yeah, like, why destroy it and dismantle it? Maybe we can make some good use out of it if we ever need it. So there's luckily a situation when they need it. Beth is there too, and now this is like a concerted effort of like, right, the moment we try to reach out to Ben, Gideon's going to know, so we got to make this count. And we learned a lot of interesting things. We find out Magic isn't the only one that's directly connected to the Quantum Leap project. Turns out even more so, even deeper than what we knew about Al's connection to it. He has an even deeper. I'm curious, is this something from the original show or not? I'd really love to. I should take time at some point in time to track down the original show. I don't know if it's streaming on like Peacock or something, or just out there digitally, whatever the case may be, on some streaming service. But I should watch the original series at some point in time to see like if there's any correlative connective tissue. Because obviously you can still enjoy the show without having the connective tissue of the original series. But I'm curious, because Janice references in the original timeline, Al was supposed to die and go missing during Vietnam, but because of Sam's interference, leaping, him and Beth eventually got together and they had 4 kids together. It's like, if it wasn't for the Quantum Leap project, me and my sisters wouldn't even be here right now. And it's like a similar thing, which is also poetic that Magic and her would be connected too, because we know Magic was possessed by Sam at one point in time. And once again, I said this at the time during season 1, I'm so curious, is that a storyline from the original series that they tied back in this way? But it's like, yeah, like all of these people are gathered and connected for different reasons by Quantum Leap in a lot of interesting ways. So that's why Janice continues to help over and over and over again. It isn't just about the legacy of her father connected to it, but it's like she has a personal connection to it. There's no records about it, so no one would have known that, but Beth knew, like she knew something was different and was able to kind of figure that out. And I think probably Al figured it out too. I don't know if Sam talked to him about it, but either way, it's just... And it kind of parallels a little bit more too with Ben and Jeffrey and the whole like losing a parent type of thing, because for one, it's like I got brought into this world and my mom and dad were together, me and my sisters exist because of all of that, so it's like the time they had together to build a beautiful family, so it's not a direct correlation, but there is like a beautiful, like somewhat parallel that can be drawn. So you have the whole team finding out when Addison visits Ben in the imaging chamber and learns about, okay, so we find out Gideon's Jeffrey, and they're trying to figure out how they could go about this. So Jen's going to like sneak in there and lock the imaging chamber, the accelerator, so that he won't be able to switch places with Ben with the code, because he can pull the trigger on it. His tech person is reluctant to pull the trigger. I think her name's Alicia. She doesn't want to pull the trigger on it because she wants to make sure it's all going to work out first and foremost. But he's adamant about, and he's very pissed at Ben. He's like, you know what? The moment Ben pops up, find a black site, dump him in. Actually, leave him a picture of Addison so that he can be constantly reminded of the woman he couldn't be together with. It's like, man, he's extra vindictive. And it's like, that's the last person, someone angry and vindictive like that, last person you want out there. Because obviously you have no idea what those years, like, that anger has only, like I said, grown and festered more and more over these 50 years, and grown to the point that it's defined and made up so much of who he is. So he's not in the right mind state, especially as that mind state's gotten more and more warped and contorted over the years, because he's been warped by that anger. Like, I don't want someone like that time traveling, changing stuff, claiming it to be for the betterment of everything. But once again, it's not up to them to really decide stuff like that. But either way, luckily, Hannah and Jeffrey live nearby the racetrack, so it's like, right, even Magic says it later on that there was a reason why Ben would be in a leap that would put him so close to Hannah and Jeffrey. Like, it was meant to be. Because the plan is like, hey, if we destroy this project he's working on currently, he'll still make the money later on and become the rich person he is as Gideon, but we'll basically break his confidence. But the problem is that could also be used to twist and contort him even worse. That's why I was like, yeah, it didn't feel like that was the right solution either. Luckily, Ben finds his own solution, but we'll get to that when we get to it. And so, but Jen, well, at least in this larger conversation too, of because by changing the events with Gideon, it could have a butterfly effect, which Magic is like, no, we were protected by the quantum bubble. But I thought was so interesting. Maybe this, because this is something they have never really discussed too much over the course of the show. Because obviously they at the team know, like, okay, this is the original timeline, this is the new timeline. We're in that situation, obviously. But now we kind of find, like, this is the first time I swear that over the course of the show, I don't think they ever brought it up in season 1. It might be a line of dialogue from maybe the original series, the term quantum bubble. But basically they're protected from it. But from Janice's perspective, it's like, no, we're not protected, because that only, the protection only comes about because it's from a leap. Because it's directly correlated to the leap. This has been going off leap. And so the ripple effect will be even bigger, because this is something intertwined with Ben and us here in the future. So these changes, we might not be protected from. We have no idea what the ripple effect could be. We might, like, they weren't even just saying, like, we'll forget about things. It's like, we might not even exist. Like, who knows how this could all shift out and play out with the paradox of it all. Because it's like, because especially when Janice brought up, well, didn't you use Jeffrey's, like, chip to find Ben? It's like, oh, so wouldn't that mean, like, if you get rid of Gideon from being who he is, then you will never get the chip from him to find Ben in the first place? So that creates like, that in itself is the paradoxical element of it all. But Magic was saying, like, this is too big and this is too important, so we have to be willing to make the sacrifices, whatever they make, and how far were we willing to go. And ultimately, we find out how far Jen was willing to go, because she realizes how big this is. Given the opportunity to lock them out of, like, the chamber, the accelerator, she sacrificed herself. She could have backed down, but she refused to, because she was like, this is bigger than me. And Jeffrey had the guy shoot her, which is heartbreaking. And you see that moment where it's just like that's the first time he's ever been directly responsible for killing somebody. Even though he didn't pull the trigger, he still was responsible for it. And he tried to be like, this is all Ben's fault. It's like, because he's trying to divert attention. Once again, it's just a lot of that anger. He needs to put it on somebody. So it's like, it's not on me. Like, none of this would happen if it wasn't for Ben. And it's like, you know, because it's also, he probably made the argument that Jen did all this because of her loyalty to Ben, you know. So he was adamant about changing things. And so Ben, given the opportunity, he even has this beautiful conversation with Addison along the way, and she's like, I'm sorry I didn't, if in case I don't get a chance to say this, Ben, I'm sorry I didn't wait for you. He was like, no, I made a promise that I'd make my way back home to you, and I broke that promise. Like, you have nothing to apologize for. And so he races against time to get to Hannah's house and meets Jeffrey, but no Hannah because she's not there. Which I was like, it's in line with last episode where she was like, this would be the last time we meet. I was like, interesting. So feels poetic that it's just him and Jeffrey. And Jeffrey doesn't want to listen to him, but Ben's like, time travel doesn't work the way we want it to. He was even saying like how fickle time travel is. He's like, if anything, it takes from you. He's like, I know what it's like. I lost my dad before. I was so young when I lost my dad. I didn't even really get to know him. And obviously Ben was in like high school, I believe, because he was like 15, I think, when his mom died. So he knows that pain of losing not just one parent, but two. Especially one that he sadly never even got to know. But it's like he can connect with the whole losing a parent thing, specifically more on the connection of knowing a parent and knowing that love and losing it. Because obviously Ben had a lot of regrets when it came to the like things between him and his mom when she passed. And then you add in like the fact is Ben's like, I also lost the other person I cared about, Addison. It's like time travel has like taken from me. That's what it does. It takes and it takes. But it's like, to compensate for it, you're able to help people. I might not be able to help myself with what was taken from me, but I can at least help out other people. That's what this is about. It's not about giving into the anger. It's about helping people, trying to make the world a better place. And he's trying to reach out. And what he is saying to Jeffrey does reach out, and it's like, I need your help with someone else who needs help. And it's like, oh, you want me to help you? It's like, no, I want you to help this family. Help someone else make sure their family doesn't get torn apart. And so the two of them work together, and ultimately I forgot what it is he had made Jeffrey build, and at the same time Gideon present day is like, see, everything's fine, like no, it didn't work because I'm still here, no butterfly, like time hasn't changed. And as he's preparing to go into the chamber, ultimately Ben ends up saving the person he's leapt into's father, and after he had a heart attack. So it all worked out in the end. And it's like, he even talks to Jeffrey. He's like, see, doesn't it feel good to save, like, so it felt good to help someone, right? It's like, yeah, especially because like he was able to take a lot of the pain he went through and do some good with it rather than destroy. He was able to help build and save using his own pain. And that, because that pain can motivate you both positively and negatively. In the original timeline, as we see, it affected him negatively. But now, which also makes you wonder, like, if it wasn't for the leaping stuff, what would Jeffrey's life have originally been? I mean, would things would probably be so different that who knows what Hannah's life would have originally been like. But it's like, this was meant to be, so this is maybe that Ouroboros of it was always meant to be this type of way, But in that moment, just as Gideon's about to step into the accelerator, time changes. And so Addison comes out and everyone's fine. Jen's back alive again. You're like, you knew it would work out in the end, but it still doesn't change the fact is that Jen did die. But like no one remembers it. But because she was with Ben inside of the accelerator, she was protected from the ripple effect, but no one else was. So basically these past elements of this past season have changed. So like Ben still did go missing for like 3 years. Everything kind of happened up to a certain point. But little things like about Gideon and stuff like that. Rachel probably never got put in this awkward position and lost her job. Like her and Ian are probably still good. Like a lot of this stuff, some of the more character driven moments we had out, because like it's just the Gideon stuff from the outset, it's different. But a lot of the emotional stuff that everybody went through this season still hit and it still happened. It's just little details had ripple effects in the long run. So, and Addison's the only one that remembers the original timeline, which is so interesting. Everyone's looking at Addison, are you kind of crazy? To be fair, it makes sense because they've never been in a situation where none of them remember. There's even kind of this cute moment where it's like Magic, Beth, Janice, and Ian all holding hands because they didn't know what's going to happen. But once again, everything worked out. Everyone's okay. Turns out Jeffrey is a major donator to the Quantum Leap project. He apparently had given like Ian and them the chip, like on his own. Like it didn't have to. He had no nefarious means like he did originally. So it all worked out in the end. And we get to see Hannah one more time, which was beautiful. I thought that was dope. I was like, hey. And I love he's like, yeah, I'm glad your calculations were wrong. She's like, hey. But she's like, she's glad it worked out in the end. It's a really beautiful story. It's like, it's a little bit of a interesting and complicated love story. But it's just kind of, once again, things that are meant to be are meant to be. So once again, you can always, I think he will always love Hannah, and Hannah will always love him. But as she brought up earlier, she's like, you have nothing to apologize for, Ben, about what happened with Josh, because we got more time with him as a family, 600 more days than we initially would have gotten if it wasn't for you. So I thought that was beautiful. And at the same time, Hannah and Ben are saying their goodbyes. There's also the situation with Addison saying that it's time for Ben to come home. The fact is that he deserves to be home after everything. He's like, he went on this journey to save me, and for her, she wants to give back. It's like, let Ben come home. I'll be the one. Someone's like, oh, so are we really? I was like, is something going to go wrong? Is Ben going to be like, no, I want to stay doing this? Because I was like, it's like, are we going to switch roles? Is Addison going to be the leaper, and he's going to be the, is he going to be the hologram? I was like, is that what the new dynamic's going to be? And that'd be kind of an interesting spot to be in. I wasn't quite sure how that was all going to play. I was like, are they really going to do that? I was like, I would assume like Ben would kind of put up more of a fight and be like, no, don't do that. Granted, he doesn't know what Addison's 100% doing. But there is that final conversation with Hannah where she's like, home isn't a place, it's a person. And in that moment, just as he's leaping and Addison is leaping into the accelerator, they don't switch spots. They're together, which I'm like, that's a beautiful twist I wasn't expecting. I'm like, holy crap. Because at first I was like, wait, is he... Because I was like, no, he would be in the accelerator. I'm like, he wouldn't be in the hologram chamber. But then they run up to each other, touch each other. And it's like, right, don't ever let me go again. And it's like, I won't. And they run off together at the end, during their sleep. So, beautiful way to end the season. Because Ian was concerned like that they wouldn't be able to bring Addison back if her and Ben did switch spots. But she's like, no, I believe in you, Ian. I know you will. You'll come through. But it's not. But there is a beauty to it that they're together. Once again, the laws of entanglement brought them back together. These star-crossed lovers. Hopefully, it won't be a situation where like they accidentally get. It seems like they're tied together. They ended up in the same leap together. So I doubt it's going to be a thing of them ending up on separate leaps. Still could be an interesting storyline if they wanted to go down that route. But it's going to be an interesting new adjustment for them. Where here we are in different. Because it'd be interesting because it's probably going to be things where they're going to be in the general area of each other when they leap together. But the problem is that. It's like, oh, we're gonna have to track each other down. It's like that's gonna be interesting too because, like, who's gonna is someone else gonna be the new hologram person, or are we gonna do kind of what we've been doing this season the most, where it's just like rotating? Because obviously it was mainly Addison last season, some pop-ins from the others, but it was like mainly a rotation this season post Ben and Addison's awkward phase. So it'd be interesting to see are they going to continue that potentially in the future, or will they find a new Addison to be their hologram? That'd just be pretty dope. It's just there's so many interesting directions you can go. Like the word I've seen kind of around the internet, kind of labeling like a very different dynamic for Quantum Leap. I think in comparison to the original series and this series, this reboot. So. Obviously, I'm getting to this a couple days late. It is Thursday at the time you're recording this. This should be going up tomorrow because I already did episode 12. I just didn't put it up today. I actually did it last night, I believe, or maybe this morning. What is time, right? Relative and interesting point to make when discussing a time travel show. But what is it? It's Thursday, but it's February 22nd. There still hasn't been any announcement. Sometimes network stuff is usually announced quite a few ways before the season wraps up. You usually get some news about that. So that's kind of got some people concerned, some fans concerned. Like, oh, does that mean there's not getting picked up for a third season? I hope it does. I mean, it's that complicated thing of it's a nice ending if sadly this is all we get, but I hope it's not. I hope we do get more adventures. The adventure shouldn't be over until we get Ben and Addison home. Once again, I don't think Scott Bakula has any interest in ever returning. Sometimes you might not just ever want to revisit a project. I did that thing. I don't have any plans of revisiting. I don't know if maybe in the future he'd change his mind, so maybe you can... Because I was about to say Scott, Jesus. Sam is still out there somewhere, so... Maybe, and obviously even more time has passed, so but the thing would probably be if he did return, he'd probably return to his present day, his present day, not what is Ben and Addison's present day. So. And once again, it'd be all probably correlative of when the time periods they refer to. But it probably would be a situation that, like, Sam would probably return to 2024 or 2023, 2024. Like, that'd probably be the era he'd return to rather than when he originally went missing in the 80s/90s. So, whatever the case may be, my fingers are crossed, hoping, like I said, it could end here, but I don't want it to because I want to see this new dynamic for Ben and Addison now being reunited and what this story holds. What's next for them on an adventure? What's the next overarching story going to be about besides just getting them back? Like, what are the fun shenanigans they'll get into? What these future leaps could look like? I hope we get a season 3 because I'd love to see where all this would ultimately ended up taking us. So. But really, that's all I wanted to talk about. To the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day, and goodbye.